welcome you to Misty Community Church. This is our 9/11 Remembrance Service. My name is Streett. I'm the senior pastor of Misty Community Church, and along with Doug Allen, our worship pastor, and also one of our worship leaders here, Barry, and Misty Creek congregation, we want to welcome you, especially our first responders that are here. What a great turnout. So thank you so much. We don't hear of many services like this being done in churches. We know that they're done throughout our nation. There were some special services today, if you were watching the news at all, that were remembrance services, some very special services. But tonight, we just wanted this to be a time of reflection, any, really what you would like for it to be honest with you. And we'll provide some guidance through that tonight. We have a prayer we'd like to open with and invite you to join us in. We're going to put that up here on these two monitors. And we'll do this together. You see that okay? Yeah. All right, great. Well, let us begin. Oh God, our hope and refuge, in our distress we come quickly to you. Shock and horror of that tragic day have subsided, replaced now with an emptiness, a longing for an innocence lost. We come remembering those who lost their lives in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. We are mindful of the sacrifice of public servants who demonstrated the greatest love of all by laying down their lives for friends. We commit their souls to your eternal care and celebrate their gifts of fallen humanity. We come remembering and we come in hope, not in ourselves, but in you. As foundations we once thought secure have been shaken, we are reminded of the illusion of security. We commit to praying for and supporting our military, remembering the sacrifice of so many in hopes to eradicate terrorism. In commemorating this tragedy, we give you thanks for your presence in our time of need, and we seek to worship you in spirit and in truth, our guide and our guardian. Amen. What do we do? What do we say on a day like today? Really? What do we say? What do we do? You've probably seen all the posts out there on social media of fallen buildings. It's depressing. We want to do something, don't we? We want to say something. We want to help, pray. But what do we do on a day like today? 18 years ago, terrorists commanded several passenger planes and killed thousands of innocent people. We began to realize the true depths of evil in the human heart and the uncertainty and fragility of life itself. I want to suggest for today, let's remember what it was like when on that fateful day, at least for a moment, we were united. We were united by the sobering reality of how fragile life really is. We were united by the overwhelming grief of loss, death, and destruction. We were united by the understanding that freedom is not free. At least for a moment, we were more patient. We were more kind. We were more understanding. At least for a moment, we were we and us, not they and them. September 11th, 2001. I had just taken my daughter Melody to preschool at Disciples United Methodist Church in Greenville, South Carolina. I was driving back to Covenant United Methodist Church, where I was the associate pastor and the youth and leisure minister, when I heard the news on the radio. I couldn't believe it. So I hurried over to the church to go to the senior pastor's office because he had cable TV in his office. And when I got there, he already had the TV on. The image on the TV was of smoke billowing from one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. I called my wife Karen to see if she had heard the news. As we were talking, the second plane hit. I will never forget that moment. My heart seemed to jump through my throat. Shock, horror, disbelief, and emotions I'm still not able to articulate were stirring in my soul. I remember saying to my wife Karen over the phone, "We're under attack. We're under attack. We're being attacked. New York City, Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, we're being attacked." I felt that way. It looked like we were. And I continued to watch as the buildings burned. Now, although my days working in construction during my high school summers were behind me, I learned enough in school to believe that it was only a matter of time until both buildings collapsed. Again, I can remember telling my wife Karen over the phone, "There's too much damage to the structure. There's no way those structures can remain standing. They're going to collapse. And everybody in those buildings, they're going to die. Anybody going in those buildings, they're going to die too." And much to my dismay, my assessment was correct. And those buildings, they did collapse. And pictures, we had some of them showing just a few moments ago, really don't do justice to what happened. I was a young husband and a young pastor at the time. I stood at a community prayer service the next day because the senior pastor was ill. So he left me in charge of this service. I didn't know what to expect, but I will tell you this. A 450-seat sanctuary was packed and out the door. And it was just me, wet behind the ears, youth minister. I was struggling to find the words, what to say, but thankfully, just enough wisdom to understand that less was more. I did not understand and had the courage to confess that to those who gathered in our sanctuary. I do remember many people faced the shallowness and the emptiness of their lives, and they turned to God as a result. You remember that churches were packed for several months after 9/11 happened. Our youth group, it tripled in size. We had youth coming from all over, from various schools every week, every Wednesday and Sunday night. They were in search of something. They were struggling. One lesson God would teach us all is this. I want you to listen to this. Our only lasting hope is in Him. Life has always been uncertain. September 11th only made it more apparent. Where will you turn for your security? Put your life in Christ's hands. For only He offers us a kingdom which cannot be shaken. His kingdom can't be destroyed. It cannot be shaken. At the 9/11 National Day of Prayer Remembrance Service, the late Billy Graham shared these words. We've always needed God from the very beginning of this nation, but today we need Him especially. We're facing a new kind of enemy. We're involved in a new type of warfare, and we need the help of the Spirit of God. The Bible's words are our hope. God is our refuge and strength, and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. That's Billy Graham's prayer. My prayer for you is that you would feel the loving arms of God wrapped around you, and will know in your heart that He will never forsake you as you trust in Him. We must never, ever forget. We must never forget the heroes of that day. We must never forget those who ran into those burning buildings not knowing what to expect, but they just sacrificed their lives. And I can tell you right now, these first responders that are in here right now would do the same thing. I know they would, because that's the way they're built, to protect us and to lay their own lives down no matter what the cost. And we're thankful for what they do and what they sacrifice, time away from the family and their own schedules to make sure that we're safe and we're secure and we're protected. That is so important. So we don't forget what you do either, my friends. We'll never forget those who said, "Let's roll." We must never forget the endless stories of sacrifice. We must never forget the men and women who since that day have stood in harm's way, defending us and making it their mission to prevent such an attack from happening again. We must never forget that over 400 first responders have died due to exposure to the events of 9/11. Did you even know that? That was after 9/11. That over 400 first responders have died. due to smoke inhalation, dust, and other elements. We must never forget them. And we must never forget that people need the Lord regardless. It's events like this that remind us how precious life is, but not to wait. To know that there are people all around us that are struggling, that feel like they have no hope, that are grieving, that are in despair, that are separated, that are lost, that are depressed, that are experiencing anxiety for whatever the reason. PTSD syndrome. A lot of things going on. So let's remember that the people we see walking around every day, that they need the Lord. They need us. We shouldn't assume that they know what we know. We shouldn't assume that we know what they're going through, because people are going through a lot nowadays. And they need to know the Lord. So you need to be there for them and tell them your story and reach out to them and help everyone that you can regardless, because that's what we're called to do.
Every day they pass me by, I can see it in their eyes. Empty people filled with care, headed who knows where. On they go through private ways, living fear to fear. Laughter hides their silent
give you an opportunity. It's a brief time, and if you need to leave and this is tight with your schedule, you're welcome to do so. But an opportunity for you to share where you were on 9/11, 18 years ago, and how has your life changed since then? Where were you? And how has your life changed since then? We've got a microphone if you want to use a microphone, or you can just stand where you are. You can project pretty loud and hear. Not easy, is it?
I was in New York City on 9/11. I'm not trying to tell you unemotionally. Our son had graduated from college, and he had just gotten an apartment, and praise the Lord, his furniture was delivered on a Monday, and then Tuesday was 9/11. And we'd gone out to dinner Monday night, and he said, this job that I'm here for is very demanding, and there's more than they need. And some of us are going to be cut. He said, but the good news is, Mom, don't worry, I'm going to get enough severance to get out of my lease and to get my furniture back to Atlanta. And I said, okay. So we had dinner, and I never thought any more about it because he was a good student, and I figured he would do okay. The next morning, I try to call, I hear sirens. I try to call one of my friends to make a luncheon appointment because we used to live in New York. And I thought, that's really strange that the phones in New York City don't work. But I hung up, started working some more, and then there was a banging on the front door, on my son's door. And I looked out, and he was standing there. And I opened the door, and he's crying. And I said, you didn't get a job, did you? And he said, oh, Mom, it's much worse than that. And he's just really crying. Because a lot of his friends were working in the tower. And he was sure that they had all died. We didn't have anything set up, so we couldn't get the news. He didn't have a radio. So he thought, well, we'll go to one of his friends' house, and maybe they're there, and we can find out what's happening. To make a long story short, we finally went back to his house and knocked on the neighbor's door and told him the situation. He let us come in, and we watched. And we went to a church, and we prayed. I'm an RN. We went to sign up. My son was going to sign up too. He's not, but we signed up together. We prayed at the church, we signed up, and then being a nurse, I thought, we're under attack. So I said to him, we need to go to the grocery store, and we need to buy things that we can open up with a can opener, buy some drinks that don't have to be refrigerated, and just have some things because we don't know what the situation is going to be. So we did that, but what we saw on the street was people that probably didn't even know each other very well. Like if I saw you and I didn't know you, I just vaguely knew you, but I was so glad that you were still alive. They were hugging on the street. There were long lines of people at the, like I said, none of the phones weren't working, so they were at long lines at the phone booths that were on the corners. And people were just running every which way. And my son wanted to go down to the site, and he had stayed with some friends. And luckily, the security guard that was there keeping people from going any further down recognized him and let us go into this place where he was staying, which was past where he could go. So we went up to the top of the building, and we watched it was about probably 4 or 5 o'clock, and we watched one of the towers or buildings just and of course, everybody up there was crying and everything. And so what did I learn from that? Life is short. We should love each other. We should appreciate what we have.
Stephen, also, they shut all the tunnels down, right? So now these people are having to evacuate, walking over the Brooklyn Bridge. Shoe stores gave tennis shoes to all the ladies because they were going to be walking for miles. They just gave shoes away to them because they had to walk across.
Yeah, there were, and then that night, all the places, people who were in the city were sort of locked in the city. They couldn't get out. And like I said, it was good my son's furniture came on Monday because nothing was allowed across the bridges for several, I think a couple of weeks.
And they shut the tunnels down.
And they shut the tunnels down, and so people, like Rich said, they were giving shoes away, and then all the places that couldn't close up because people couldn't go home, they put candles in the windows, like the bars and the hotels and everything. Of course, the lights were out, and it was just And then, of course, the doors of churches were open, and people were going into the churches and praying, so.
You guys are great.
I don't think anybody's gonna call anything.
That was a good one.
That was pretty solid.
She supplied the pictures for our slides tonight, so those you won't just find anywhere. Those are eyewitness pictures.
The only thing I'll say is I used to like air travel.
Well, that was the other thing, I couldn't get home. I was supposed to go home and I couldn't get home. We couldn't rent cars, there was no buses, there was no trains, and of course the planes weren't flying. So I got on one of the first flights out, and this poor sweet little girl that sat beside me was crying when I sat down, and she was crying when we got off and it landed. So it was, I tried to comfort her, I said, you know, of all the flights, this is probably the safest flight you could possibly take today, because they have waited this long and checked everything out, and I'm sure this is fine, but she was terrified, and I wasn't able to comfort her, not holding her hand, not anything.
I just found out today that I've got braces, and the guy that put them in ate dinner on the top floor Windows of the World on September 10th. So they were there the night before. But another story, a lady that came down and worked with me in the financial business, she was in the tower, they got hit, and her boss said, hey, let's go in the corner office, they'll come get us, they'll send a helicopter or somewhere, they're gonna come get us. And another guy that worked with her said, we gotta get out of here right now, we gotta go. So about 6 of them left that office, and they were looking for a way out. They went by the elevators, of course they weren't gonna work, but flames were coming out of the elevators. They way up, 70, 80, way up. And so they went there, I think there were maybe four different staircases, and they went to one, they couldn't get in that one, 2, they couldn't get in that one, 3, they couldn't get in that one. They got to the 4th one, and they finally started coming down the building. And they got down about halfway, and the lights were on in this big open area. People were sitting down drinking coffee and Cokes and drinking water, taking a break on the way down, because it looked like business as usual, no problem. But up above them, there was a problem, and they didn't know the extent of it. So they got there, and the guy goes, no, we got to keep going, we got to go, you can't stop, we got to go. So he took all 6 of those down, and they got outside the building, got about 100 yards away, and there's a picture of this woman that worked with me. Right when they're 100 yards away from the building, it started pancaking down, and there's a picture of her looking back at the building. So she started running, and the dust from the building threw her down on the ground, and she said people were just picking their heads up. It looked like gophers coming out of holes, all the people looking up. And she sat on the curb. There's a picture of her in one of these books, covered in that ash. And she walked probably 20 miles home, I guess, across that bridge and wherever she lived. And the next day or 2, she couldn't get out of bed because the adrenaline was pumping, and she had to get out of there, and she was running and walking home, and made it. But and then she moved down here and went to work with us. But it was terrible. When she every year on this date, I just send her a note telling her I'm thinking about her on this day. But she made it out. Life is short, and it is precious, and freedom is great.
Tell them when you saw the picture of the weaver.
Well, yeah, we went to the 9/11 exhibit, and she had never seen that picture I told you about where she was looking back, and I was walking by, and they were showing a slideshow on this beam in the exhibit, and we were walking by, and I looked at it, and kind of glanced at it. I go, that looked like Dominique. So I stayed there and went through the whole slideshow again, and then I got a picture of her on that and sent it to her, but she had never seen it. But it was her the moment she heard the building falling, looking back at the building. So.
I have a friend who is a survivor who was working in the tower, and she's never been the same, and she, you know, suffers from PTSD or whatever. And what stands out to me in her story, and she goes around and speaks, she's speaking somewhere in New York today, but a good friend of hers stayed behind with a man who was a quadriplegic who worked there, and the man just would refuse to leave his friend alone, and obviously they both perished. But what that speaks to my heart, and what that shows is the human spirit. And, you know, kind of like the others were talking about, people just hugging each other on the street. You know, life is so fast, and what that teaches me is, you know, life is so fast, and when something like that happens, how everything slows down and people pull together, and it brings out the best in people. I also want to say, before we lose any more of our first responders, that God bless you so much, and thank you so much for what you do. I know people don't tell you enough, but you're our heroes.
Amen. Well, thank you all for those who shared and for being here. You know, when I was preparing for this and thinking about it, and this is probably, well, I've done one of these every year since this happened. So, yeah, 18 years I've done a service, and I had somebody tell me today, you know, we stopped doing it at the 10th anniversary, you know, it's kind of, I'm like, why would you do that? I don't get it, because it happened, it's real, and it still affects people, and, you know, it changed the way we do things. When it comes to safety and security, I mean, you go to the airport, you used to go to the airport, and, I mean, you could get to the airport 30 minutes before your plane, you were good to go. You could go to Popeyes and get something to eat, and walk right into the plane. Now you got to get there 3 hours early. You might not make it if you're 3 hours early. So, a lot of things have changed. Going to ball games. Going to ball games now, you know, it's everything. It's changed drastically.
Yeah, I was actually on maternity leave because Bella was only 2 weeks old, but I worked for Delta Airlines when that happened. So, although Delta wasn't one of the airlines that was one of the planes that happened, it affected that industry tremendously. When I was on maternity leave with Eli, because I worked for Delta then, I was able to disconnect and all of that, but because it happened while I was on maternity leave with Bella, I wasn't able to disconnect. And I had lots of friends or flight attendants and just all of that. And, you know, there were a lot of, the impact to that industry didn't stop with just security and that kind of stuff. I mean, people lost their jobs because the airline industry was so impacted by it. You know, the ripple effect went on and on and on. So it was tough because, like I said, I was on maternity leave, but I couldn't disconnect at that point because of what had happened.
So when I was thinking through this service and what would be an appropriate song to close with, you know, a lot of the hymns are written out of great personal tragedy, great personal loss. And I can't think of a hymn that was written out of greater loss than this one. And it was penned by a guy named Horatio Spafford, and was a prominent businessman in Chicago in the 1800s, and lost everything, lost his business in the Great Chicago Fire. So he decided to relocate his family back to France. So he had to settle some affairs in Chicago, and he put his wife and 4 daughters on a ship heading back to France. The ship collided with another ship in the mid-Atlantic Ocean, and he got a telegram when they were saved, the survivors were saved, and from England, the telegram from his wife said, "Saved alone," and he had lost his 4 daughters in that accident. And so, as soon as he could, he settled his affairs and jumped on another ship to meet his wife And the captain of that ship, once they reached the basic coordinates of where he thought the ship went down and where his daughters perished, he penned these words: when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. When he rejoined his wife in England and they embraced through tears, they said, I'm glad that we can worship the Lord and praise the Lord when it cost us something. Man, what faith. What faith. Well, September 11th, 2001 cost us all something, didn't it? I think a piece of our heart died that day. We all lost brothers and sisters of humanity. And it was a brutal day. But the beauty is, there's evil in this world. We saw it that day. Sometimes we see it. We see all we have to do is turn on the news. We know there's evil in this world. But God's grace is greater still. And we have that promise that one day we'll stand before the Lord. We won't need the sun or the moon anymore because the Lord himself will be our light. And he says he'll wipe every tear away. There'll be no more mourning or crying, sorrow or pain, because the old order of things will be passed away. And right now, even right now, he is in the process of making all things new. So we can stand together with confidence in the Lord, and we can sing, it is well with my soul. So let's do that now.
Sorrows like sea billows roll.
Ask me who I am. I'm a child of the King. I'm forgiven, I'm blessed, I'm set apart, and I'm forever in His safety, protected, just as you are. He's with you wherever you are and wherever you go. And we're thankful that He uses wonderful men and women like these to watch over us and protect us. Another extension of His goodness. So go forth knowing that you are safe, secure, and you're in the palm of His hands. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and forevermore. Amen. Go in peace.
Thank you very much.